Welcome to the Labour Force. I am Bongeni Mutwa. It's been almost 3 years since the National Minimum Wage Act was passed and came into effect in the country. The National Minimum Wage Act was adopted in order to address vast income inequalities in the country. The National Minimum Wage Act stipulates wages that must be paid to a long list of vulnerable workers in the country per hour. The wages of farm workers, domestic workers, and people who work for the extended public works program top the list. Initially, the rate for farm workers was set at 20 Rand 76 cents per hour. Now it's been increased to 21 Rand 69 cents per hour. COSATU regards that as significant progress.
Last year, we argued at the level of COSATU and Labour in adjusting the minimum wage increase for the farm workers. This year, we said 2021, it must be, that's what the Act says, it must be equalized. And where it is today, the farm workers are, the national minimum wage increase is equal to the any other person is about 21 Rand 69 cents this year per hour. And for the domestic workers, it's 19 Rand 15 cents. And we think that as part of the fight we've been ensuing at the National Minimum Wage Commission in public as workers, as COSATU, we also push that 2022 there must be an equalization of the minimum wage to the domestic workers.
The National Minimum Wage Act allows employers who are experiencing financial distress to apply for exemption from compliance. COSATU says many employers are abusing the Exemption Clause.
The monitoring of the Department of Labour is very weak, and that's why we've got a problem, and that's why, as COSATU, we felt that one of the issues that we should do is to do a program of education, of going to the farm workers, making them aware of this, those who are not aware, making them to understand what is their right in terms of this minimum wage act, including the domestic workers.
A total of 128,000 employers are said to have applied for exemption in the 6 months between September 2019 and February 2020, just before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Bongeni Mutwa, SABC News, Johannesburg. For more, we are joined by the Chief Director in the Department of Labour, Mr. Thembinkosi Mkhaliphi, who is responsible for the enforcement of the national minimum wage. Mr. Mkhaliphi, you, of course, had the honor of being the first guest on this show a couple of years ago. It's a pleasure to welcome you back. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers.
Now, the National Minimum Wage Act was adopted to address vast income inequalities in the country. 3 years in, is the objective being met?
We think so.
Please explain. What makes you so confident?
The national minimum wage is implemented within all the organizations that our research inspection. Yes, there are challenges because there will be employers that do not comply, thinking that they are not going to be caught. But the mere fact that we've got a minimum wage is there in place, and now domestic farm workers are also within the port of all the national minimum wage. And even if you look on the application for exemption that have been applied, on the statistics that you're raising, that involve around about 105 workers only. Therefore, we don't think that the employers are abusing the exemption process of the national minimum wage. We think in terms of the process that we have and our systems, those companies that are due, if they apply, they get. Those that are not entitled to it because they can afford, they won't get it.
Now, if these figures are correct, 128,000 applications for exemption by employers in the first year of the implementation of the Act, within a 6 months period, it seems rather high. Wouldn't you say that the level of applications for exemption is rather high by employers?
Not at all. Not at all. From our side, we would definitely not say that. If you look, you're looking at the period September to February before the lockdowns. Now, if you look during the lockdown itself, only about 108 employers applied. Now, you've got a reduction from the period February 2021, March 2021, when the national minimum wage, when the lockdown started and the coronavirus hit the economy, only 104. The 6 months before that, 128. Therefore, we don't think that there's been any increase in the numbers that is not explainable in terms of this. And you would expect, in fact, that during this period, more employers would come in and apply for exemptions on the national minimum wage because of the effect of the virus on the economy. Therefore, for us, we don't think that there's been any problem with this.
Now, we've just heard for ourselves the Deputy General Secretary of COSATU, Mr. Soliphetwe, who sits on the National Minimum Wage Commission, saying, and not mincing his words, that enforcement by you guys, the Department of Labor, is very weak. Are you saying that COSATU is being unfair?
Well, I mean, I agree with COSATU. Criticism are due on the enforcement. There are a number of challenges around the enforcement. And maybe they might be correct. You might be correct on the issues that the reason we've got low numbers of application for exemption could be that employers are not complying and we're not able to cash them. That's that challenge. And remember, our legislation is made on the premise that labor employers will assist in this process. We'll never have inspectors in each and every factory. If you look, let's look at domestic sector. There are about what? Less than 1 million domestic employers in this country. Now, to have inspectors going to each and every domestic house that employs domestic workers to check the minimum wage, it's not going to be possible. You need collaboration with labor, with business, to ensure the implementation. Therefore, there are challenges. There's no doubt about that. But we can only succeed in dealing with these problems when we work together. It's not going to help. We can throw stones, but we must come up with a solution and come up to the party to assist with the enforcement of this minimum wage. It's too important for the country to be left only to the department to say, it's your baby, enforce it. It's all of us who must come to the party. Labor must come to the party. Business must come to the party. Our inspectors must do their job.
Now, of course, we have seen with the UIF chairs that there's been an abuse of the system by some employers. On your side, are you vigilant enough to make sure that the National Minimum Wage Act, the Exemption Clause, is not abused by unscrupulous employers out there? Mr. Mkhaliphi?
There is no way that employers can abuse the system because the whole application process of the national minimum wage is done online. Employers submit information, the system analyzes. Now, the only way of abusing it would be to submit wrong information that is not accurate. Then if that's the case, we remember in the application of the national minimum wage, it is required that companies must consult with employees in their establishment. If employees also know that the company is not struggling as it says it's struggling, we can only work with the information that is presented with us. And that's why we're saying that we expect our colleagues and our counterpart, our parties that work together with us, if they believe that a company should not have been given the exemption because of the following reason, give us the reason. We'll investigate on those, take decisions on that. But of all the companies that have received exemption, it's companies that have supplied the information that is required for the system to be able to grant or not to grant the exemption.
Mr. Mkhaliphi, I thank you for your time. It's a pleasure to have you back on the show. We look forward to chatting to you again in the future. Please have a good day and good luck with your work.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's where we leave it.